Carl Jung's groundbreaking work revealed how we unconsciously bury traits we dislike, forming what he called the shadow, like shoving unwanted luggage into a mental closet, only to have it dictate our steps. This hidden baggage shapes our actions more than we'd care to admit. But here's the turning point. Jung didn't just diagnose the problem, he mapped the solution. By courageously unpacking these rejected parts, we begin the most transformative journey possible, one that doesn't just heal divisions within ourselves, but unlocks capabilities we never knew we possessed. That moment when you stop running from yourself, that's where true power begins. The call to adventure, your inner truth. Have you ever felt a quiet pull toward something more, even when it didn't make sense to others? That faint sense that your life could be different, even if you can't explain why? This is your inner voice calling. It often starts as a subtle discomfort, a feeling that something isn't quite right about how you're living. This discomfort is the first sign you're ready to choose yourself. You might notice it as a tightness in your chest when you say yes to things you don't want to do, or as exhaustion that lingers no matter how much you rest. Studies show that suppressed emotions don't just disappear. They manifest physically as stress, fatigue, or even chronic tension in your body. These sensations serve as signals from your deeper self, whispering that you're not living in alignment with your truth. Many people ignore this call because answering it means shaking up familiar routines and relationships. It's easier to stay in the discomfort you know than step into the unknown. But like a plant growing toward light, your psyche naturally seeks truth. It won't let you ignore what's real forever. The discomfort you feel isn't random. It's guidance. Pay attention to the signs. Do you find yourself restless at night, caught in recurring dreams or thoughts that won't fade? Do certain obligations drain you more than they used to? These aren't coincidences. They're signals that your authentic self is pushing back against the version of you that exists to please others. This emptiness is a sign that your true self is not being nourished. External validation, whether from career success, relationships, or praise, won't fill it. The only way forward is through self-love, even if that means navigating a period of inner chaos. This chaos is necessary. It's the process of shedding old masks and confronting what you've been avoiding. Think of it this way. Every time you say yes when you mean no, you leave a piece of yourself behind. Over time, these small betrayals add up, creating distance between who you are and who the world expects you to be. The tension builds until the discomfort is too strong to ignore. People often mistake this discomfort for failure. They assume they should feel grateful for what they have, or that something is wrong with them for wanting more. But this discomfort isn't a flaw. It's an invitation. It means you're growing. The life you built no longer fits who you're becoming. The hardest part isn't hearing the call. It's admitting that you need to answer it. Society rewards conformity, not authenticity. Stepping away from expectations can feel like walking alone in the dark. But that loneliness is temporary. What replaces it is something far stronger, a sense of alignment with yourself that no external approval can match. Your body already knows the truth. The tight shoulders, the constant fatigue, the hollow feeling after achieving something that should have made you happy. These are clues pointing you toward what's real. Ignoring them only leads to more resistance. Listening, no matter how disruptive, is the first step toward wholeness. The inner chaos you fear isn't a punishment, it's a reorganization. When you stop performing the version of yourself that others expect, space opens up for who you really are. That transition won't be smooth. There will be resistance, from others, from yourself, from routines you've outgrown. But on the other side of that discomfort is clarity. Hearing the call is just the beginning. What comes next is harder. It's the moment you stop hesitating and take the first step toward yourself, even if it means leaving behind what was once comfortable. Crossing the threshold, the first brave choice. There comes a moment when you have to choose between who others expect you to be and who you really are. That first clear no to external pressure, that's the real turning point. Most people hesitate here, caught between the fear of judgment and the growing need for truth. Society rewards compliance far more than authenticity. Those early choices to put yourself first often feel unsettling, even wrong, because they go against everything you've been conditioned to believe. Research shows something interesting about this moment. When you start prioritizing your own needs, your brain literally works differently. Neuroimaging studies reveal that decision-making shifts when you stop automatically defaulting to others' expectations. Areas linked to self-awareness and personal values activate more strongly. But this doesn't make the choice easier. At first, it feels like stepping into empty space. Think of a child learning to walk. Those first steps are unsteady, even frightening, but necessary. Without them, movement is impossible. Choosing yourself works the same way. Initial stumbles don't mean you're failing. They mean you're trying something new. Society rarely prepares us for this. From childhood, we're taught to follow rules, please authority figures, and seek approval. When you start acting against that training, it disrupts old patterns. That disruption is growth, not failure. So why does choosing yourself feel so lonely at first? Because it often means stepping away from familiar roles. The people in your life have come to expect certain behaviors from you. When those behaviors change, relationships shift. Some pull back, not because you've done anything wrong, but because your growth makes them uncomfortable with their own stagnation. Those accustomed to the old version of you might drift away. This isn't rejection, it's revelation. Connections built on conditions aren't lost, they're revealed for what they always were. Self-doubt creeps in during these moments. You might question whether you're being selfish or unreasonable, but selfishness is taking from others without consideration. Honoring your needs isn't selfish, it's responsible. Projects, relationships, and obligations won't benefit from a version of you that's exhausted, resentful, or disconnected. Choosing yourself isn't about rejecting others. It's about showing up as someone who can truly engage instead of just going through the motions. External criticism often follows these early choices. People might accuse you of changing or not caring. What they're really reacting to is the loss of predictability. You're no longer playing the role they assigned you, and that shift can threaten their sense of stability. Criticism says more about the critic's discomfort than your choices. This isn't easy to hear in the moment, but understanding it helps. As Jung noted, when we aren't in touch with our own shadow aspects, we tend to project them onto others. Their resistance might reflect their own unmet potential, not your mistakes. Isolation is temporary. Amidst the drift, new connections form. People who recognize and value your genuine self. These relationships feel different because they're built on truth rather than expectation. You won't have to contort yourself to fit. The space left by those who leave isn't empty for long. The shadow plays a role here too. Jung described it as the parts of ourselves we deny or hide. When you choose authenticity, you're forced to confront these rejected aspects. Maybe you've always disliked certain traits in others, only to realize they mirror what you've suppressed in yourself. That recognition is uncomfortable, but necessary. The shadow holds creativity and strength alongside the traits we judge. Ignoring it doesn't make it disappear. It just gives it unconscious control over your actions. Integration takes courage. You might feel exposed, as if you're shedding armor you didn't realize you wore. But armor grows heavy over time. The relief comes when you stop performing and simply exist. This doesn't mean abandoning responsibility or courtesy. It means acting from intention rather than fear. Crossing this threshold changes everything. Once you say that first no or make that initial choice for yourself, there's no real going back. Awareness can't be undone. Even if you try to return to old patterns, they'll feel increasingly hollow. This isn't a loss. It's a sign of growth. The loneliness you fear is just the pause between who you were and who you're becoming. What comes next is harder, but more freeing. You'll start noticing the masks you've worn, how often you've smiled when you wanted to frown, agreed when you wanted to refuse. Each small choice to be honest, even when it's uncomfortable, builds a stronger foundation. The doubts don't vanish, but they matter less. You begin trusting yourself in ways you couldn't before. This is just the start. Once you cross, you'll face what you've avoided. The parts of yourself hidden in shadows. The fears you've buried. The potential you've ignored. But facing them is how you become whole. Meeting your shadow. The parts you've hidden. That trait you can't stand in others? The one that makes your jaw clench or your stomach tighten? Look closer. There's a good chance it's your own shadow staring back at you. Carl Jung called this phenomenon projection, the way we externalize the parts of ourselves we refuse to acknowledge. When you react strongly to someone else's behavior, it's often a signal. That thing you judge? It might exist within you, buried under layers of denial. Facing your shadow isn't about admitting you're flawed. It's about realizing you've been fragmented. Jung described the shadow as the parts of our personality we reject because society, or we ourselves, deem them unacceptable. These might be aggressive impulses, hidden desires, or vulnerabilities we're ashamed of. They don't disappear when we ignore them. Instead, they seep out in unexpected ways. Maybe you pride yourself on patience, but snap at minor inconveniences. Perhaps you criticize others for being selfish, while secretly resenting always putting yourself last. These contradictions aren't accidents. They're clues. Psychological research shows how repressed traits influence behavior unconsciously. The qualities you suppress don't vanish. They operate underground. Think of it like a closet you've stuffed full for years. You might not see the mess, but it's there, affecting how you move through the world. To reorganize, you have to empty it first. Shadow work is that process, pulling everything out, examining what you've hidden, and deciding what to keep. It's uncomfortable. It means admitting truths you've worked hard to avoid. But avoidance comes at a cost. Unintegrated shadows control you. Integrated shadows empower you. The shadow isn't evil, it's just unexamined. For example, someone who constantly plays the victim might be refusing to acknowledge their own power. A person who judges others harshly for mistakes is often resisting their own imperfections. These patterns repeat until you confront them. Jung noted that when we aren't in touch with our shadow aspects, we project them onto others. That coworker who irritates you with their ambition? They might mirror your own repressed drive. The friend whose neediness annoys you? They could reflect your disowned desire for care. Projection is a defense mechanism. It's easier to spot flaws in others than admit them in ourselves. But this avoidance keeps us stuck. Every time you criticize someone else for a trait you refuse to acknowledge in yourself, you hand that trait more power over you. The energy you use to suppress it could be channeled into growth. Repressed aggression can fuel determination. Hidden sensitivity can deepen empathy. The shadow holds not just what you fear, but what you need. Integration starts with noticing your reactions. When someone triggers a strong emotional response, pause. Ask yourself, could this be about me? That doesn't mean the other person's behavior is acceptable. It means your reaction might reveal something deeper. For instance, if you're furious at a friend for canceling plans, explore why. Is it because you've said yes to things you didn't want to do? The shadow often points to unmet needs. The process isn't about blaming yourself, it's about reclaiming disowned parts. Jungian therapy aimed to integrate shadow aspects creatively, not destructively. A person who denies their assertiveness might burst with anger when pushed too far. But if they acknowledge that strength, They can set boundaries before resentment builds. Someone ashamed of their sensitivity might numb their emotions, only to break down later. Embracing that tenderness allows them to navigate it with intention. Shadows also hold positive qualities. Maybe you admire someone's confidence, but call them arrogant. That could signal your own untapped self-assurance. Perhaps you envy a creator's boldness while dismissing their work as attention-seeking. That might reflect your suppressed creativity. The traits we reject in others often represent potential we've buried. This work is continuous. Shadows don't dissolve overnight. Each layer you uncover reveals another. But with each step, you reclaim more of yourself. The goal isn't perfection, it's wholeness. Jung described individuation as the journey toward becoming who you truly are. It requires facing what you've avoided, including the parts that scare you. Integration changes how you relate to others. When you stop projecting, you see people more clearly. Relationships become less about hidden triggers and more about genuine connection. You also attract different dynamics. People who mirrored your unhealed patterns may drift away. Those who appreciate your authenticity will draw closer. Your shadow isn't your enemy. It's the doorway to what you've excluded from your life. Behind the traits you've denied lie creativity, strength, and resilience. The aspects you've buried hold keys to deeper fulfillment. Confronting them isn't about judgment. It's about freedom. This confrontation isn't easy. It requires looking at yourself with brutal honesty. But what waits on the other side is worth it. A version of you that's no longer at war with itself. One that doesn't waste energy hiding. That version can offer the world something rare. A person who's truly whole. The next step is harder. Integration requires a tool most people avoid. Sitting with discomfort. It means staying present with what you find instead of turning away. But this is how shadows lose their power. When you stop running from them, they stop running your life. The ordeal. When relationships change. When you start choosing yourself, not everyone will celebrate. Some people might resist the changes they see in you, even if those changes are positive. This happens because relationships often function like unspoken agreements. We play certain roles for others, and they come to expect that version of us. When you stop performing that role, the dynamic shifts. Loved ones who relied on the old, you might push back, consciously or unconsciously. They may not be trying to hurt you. They're just reacting to the loss of what was familiar and predictable. Think of the crab bucket analogy. If one crab tries to climb out, the others will often pull it back down. It's not malice, it's a survival instinct. The group stays the same because change feels risky. Human relationships can work the same way. When you start setting boundaries or expressing needs you used to ignore, some people will resist. They might guilt you for changing, or remind you of how you used to be. This isn't about you failing them. It's about their discomfort with the new rules. Research shows that personal growth often disrupts social dynamics. The people closest to you have mental models of who you are, how you react, what you'll tolerate, what they can expect from you. When those models no longer fit, it creates tension. Some will adjust, others will double down, insisting you return to the old version of yourself. This resistance isn't a sign you're doing something wrong, it's evidence that your growth is real and noticeable. Relationships don't end because you choose yourself. They end because they were conditional. A friendship based on you always being available might weaken when you start saying no. A partnership built on your compliance might crumble when you voice disagreements. These aren't losses, they're clarifications. You're seeing which connections can adapt to your growth and which were only sustaining themselves at your expense. This process can feel like the world crumbling. When people you trusted react with confusion or disapproval, it's isolating. You might question whether the changes are worth it. But pay attention to what happens next. As old connections fade, new ones emerge. people who resonate with the real you, not the role you used to play. These relationships feel different from the start because they're not built on expectations. They're built on mutual recognition. You'll notice you don't have to explain yourself as much. The right people understand without lengthy justifications. Consider why some relationships struggle to survive authenticity. If someone only valued you when you were convenient, their resistance now makes sense. If a family member only felt secure when you followed their advice, they might panic when you start thinking for yourself. Again, this isn't about you being wrong. It's about systems recalibrating. Every relationship has its own equilibrium. When you change, the balance shifts. Some people will find a new equilibrium with you, others won't. This phase isn't about cutting people off, it's about observing who makes space for your growth. You'll notice some surprising supporters, maybe a colleague who admires your honesty or a relative who admits they wish they'd done the same. Others might surprise you in the opposite direction, reacting more strongly than you expected. These reactions are information. They show you who feels threatened by your autonomy and who finds it inspiring. The crab bucket effect isn't permanent. As you keep climbing, the grip of old dynamics weakens. You'll care less about being pulled back because you've seen what's beyond the bucket. This isn't arrogance, it's perspective. Once you've experienced relationships where you don't have to shrink, you can't unsee the difference. What fills the space left by faded connections? At first it might just be quiet. That quiet is necessary. It's where you learn to trust yourself without constant external validation. Over time, you'll gravitate toward people who aren't intimidated by your boundaries or authenticity. These connections feel lighter because they don't require performance. There's another layer here too. Sometimes the person resisting your growth is a version of yourself, the part that still craves old approval. You might catch yourself slipping back into old patterns to keep peace or avoid conflict. That's normal. Unlearning people-pleasing is a process, not a switch you flip. Every time you choose yourself despite that inner hesitation, it gets easier. This ordeal exposes a truth about relationships. The strongest ones aren't threatened by evolution. A good friend might need time to adjust, but they won't guilt you for changing. A healthy partner might miss certain aspects of the past, but still support your growth. The people who truly care about you will find ways to reconnect with who you're becoming, not just who you were. You're not responsible for managing everyone else's discomfort. Your only obligation is to honor your own truth with kindness. Some bridges might feel unstable for a while. Some might collapse. But the ones that remain will be sturdier, built on something real instead of roles and expectations. Through this fire, something unexpected emerges, a clearer sense of who you are when no one's pulling you in another direction. That center holds even when relationships change. You start to realize that the loneliness you feared wasn't loneliness at all. It was the space between who you used to be and who you're becoming. And in that space, you find something no conditional connection could ever give you. A self that no longer depends on permission to exist. The treasure, discovering yourself. When you begin choosing yourself, you might notice something shifting inside. It's not just your behavior that changes, it's your fundamental sense of who you are. Carl Jung called this the self, with a capital S. And it's different from what we normally think of as our self. The ego is who you believe yourself to be right now. Your identity, your personality, the version of you that interacts with the world. But the self is larger. It's who you're meant to become when you stop limiting yourself to who you've been told to be. At first, this self can feel unfamiliar, even foreign. That's because it exists beyond your current self-concept. Think of a sculptor looking at a block of marble. The statue already exists within it. They're just chipping away what doesn't belong. The self works the same way. It's the blueprint of your fullest potential, waiting beneath layers of conditioning, fear, and old identities. Jung saw the self as the organizing principle of the psyche, the force that guides you toward wholeness. This isn't about becoming perfect. It's about integrating all parts of yourself, even the ones you've denied or hidden. The journey toward this wholeness is called individuation. It's not a linear path or a checklist to complete. It's a continuous process of aligning more closely with the self, like tuning a radio to the right frequency. There's tension in this process. The ego resists change because it's built on predictability. Your habits, your defenses, the version of you that feels safe. But the self pulls you toward growth, even when it disrupts that safety. This tension isn't accidental. Jung compared it to the Taoist concept of yin and yang, opposing forces that, when balanced, create harmony. Within you there are contradictions, strength and vulnerability, logic and intuition, seriousness and playfulness. The ego often chooses one side and rejects the other. The self doesn't eliminate these opposites. It helps you hold both. A person who integrates their aggression doesn't become docile. They learn to channel that energy into assertiveness. Someone who embraces their sensitivity doesn't lose resilience. They gain depth. Individuation doesn't happen by accident. It requires conscious choice. Every time you honor a gut feeling despite logic, or set a boundary where you used to people-please, you're following the self. At first, these choices might feel like betrayals, to your old identity, to others' expectations. But they're actually loyalties, to the version of you that's waiting to emerge. This is why Jung described the self as the totality of the whole psyche. It includes everything you are, not just what's visible on the surface. One way to recognize the self at work is through synchronicity, meaningful coincidences that seem to guide you. Maybe you keep encountering the same lesson in different forms. Perhaps opportunities appear just as you're ready for them. These aren't random. The self operates beyond conscious awareness, pulling you toward experiences that foster growth. It's why some paths feel inexplicably right even when they defy conventional logic. The self also appears in dreams, often as a wise figure, an old man or woman symbolizing wholeness. Jung borrowed this idea from Hindu philosophy, where the self represents the inner divine core of a person. This isn't about religion, it's a psychological truth. When you stop outsourcing your sense of direction to others, the compass you find is the self. It doesn't demand perfection, it asks for authenticity. This process reveals a paradox. The more you become yourself, the more connected you feel to something larger. Individuality isn't adlation. When you no longer twist yourself to fit molds, you relate to others from a place of wholeness, not lack. Relationships become more honest, work feels more aligned. Even solitude takes on a different quality. It's no longer loneliness, but space to hear yourself. There's relief in realizing you don't have to figure everything out at once. The self unfolds gradually, like a plant growing toward light. Some days you'll feel it clearly, in moments of certainty, creativity, or unexpected peace. Other days it might seem distant. That's normal. This isn't about reaching a finish line, it's about showing up, again and again, for whatever version of you comes next. What's on the other side of this process? Not some idealized, flawless version of yourself, but someone fully human, capable of holding contradictions without falling apart. Someone who trusts their own direction even when no one else understands it. The self isn't a destination. It's the daily practice of returning to yourself, especially when the world pulls you away. This practice isn't grand gestures. It's small, consistent choices. The decision to speak up when you'd usually stay quiet. To rest when you'd normally push harder. Each choice strengthens the connection to yourself. Over time, what once felt like effort becomes instinct. The treasure here isn't an endpoint. It's the unfolding, the slow, sometimes messy revelation that who you are was never the problem. The problem was believing you had to be anyone else. When that realization sinks in, something shifts. The masks start to feel heavier than the truth. The critics' voices grow quieter than your own. This is how you know the self is guiding you. The path feels less like climbing and more like coming home. The version of you that once seemed out of reach was there all along. Not in the distant future, but just beneath the surface of who you've been told to be. The key wasn't building something new. It was clearing away what never belonged to you in the first place. And just when this starts making sense, the next layer of the work begins. Because this isn't a realization you have once. It's one you return to day after day, as life reshapes you in ways you can't yet imagine. The daily practice, small acts of courage. Becoming your authentic self doesn't happen in one dramatic moment. It's built through small, everyday choices, the kind that are easy to overlook but add up over time. Think of it like muscle memory. The more you practice being honest about what you want, the more natural it becomes. But just like physical strength fades without use, authenticity weakens when you stop paying attention. Daily life constantly tests your commitment with compromises that seem insignificant at first. Saying yes when you mean no, laughing at a joke that makes you uncomfortable, or staying quiet when you should speak up. These moments matter more than you think. Research on habit formation shows why this works. When you consistently make choices aligned with your true self, you reinforce the neural pathways associated with authenticity. It's not about willpower, it's about repetition. Each time you express a need or set a boundary, you're training your brain to recognize those actions as normal. Studies suggest it takes an average of 66 days for a new behavior to become automatic. That's why the small decisions count. Pushing through discomfort today makes it easier tomorrow. Take the Alcoholics Anonymous approach of one day at a time. They don't ask members to commit to lifelong sobriety, just to make the choice for today. This philosophy works because it's manageable. Similarly, authenticity isn't about overhauling your entire personality overnight. It's about asking yourself in each moment, what feels true right now? Some days that might mean declining an invitation because you need rest. Other days it could be voicing an unpopular opinion. The scale of the action isn't what matters. The consistency is. Jungian psychology emphasizes this daily practice through individuation, the process of becoming your complete self. But as philosopher Stephen notes, measuring progress over a lifetime is abstract. That's why focusing on single days helps. Imagine each day as a miniature version of your entire life. Did you honor yourself today? Did you listen to your instincts? This approach turns self-discovery from an overwhelming concept into tangible actions. It's not about getting somewhere. It's about how you show up in the present. The shadow plays a role here too. Those small compromises often happen because we're avoiding parts of ourselves we don't want to face. Maybe you suppress frustration to appear easygoing or hide your enthusiasm to fit in. These denials create internal resistance. But when you start acknowledging those feelings, even just to yourself, you chip away at that resistance. Shadow work isn't always dramatic revelations. Sometimes it's simply noticing when you feel resentful and asking why. Consider how artists approach their craft. A painter doesn't create a masterpiece in one session. They layer strokes over time. Writers don't produce novels overnight. They accumulate sentences. Authenticity develops the same way. A boundary set here, a truth spoken there. These acts might seem minor in isolation, but collectively they redefine your relationship with yourself. One practical method is the evening review. Before bed, reflect on 2 questions. When did I feel most like myself today? And when did I feel disconnected? Don't judge the answers, just observe. Maybe you felt alive during a morning walk but stifled in a meeting. These observations reveal patterns. Over weeks, you'll notice which environments or interactions drain you and which energize you. That awareness guides future choices. Relationships test this practice constantly. Someone might react poorly when you start changing. Their resistance doesn't mean you're wrong, it means the old dynamic is shifting. Here's where micro-choices matter most. You don't have to confront every conflict immediately. Start small, pause for 3 seconds before agreeing to requests. That space lets you check in with yourself. Do you want to do this, or do you feel obligated? Those seconds of hesitation build self-trust. Physical cues help too. Notice where tension shows up in your body when you're inauthentic. A clenched jaw, a stomach ache? Those sensations are feedback. Your body often knows before your mind does. The more you heed those signals, the faster you'll recognize when you're drifting from your truth. There's a paradox in this work. The more you focus on daily actions rather than grand transformations, the faster change happens. Like compound interest, small investments in authenticity yield exponential returns. A year of saying "I don't agree" when you'd normally stay silent reshapes your confidence. Months of prioritizing rest over productivity recalibrate your self-worth. None of these acts are dramatic, but together they rebuild your foundation. Stephen's Taoist-inspired approach highlights this. Just as a river carves rock through persistent flow, daily practice reshapes identity. You won't always feel motivated. Some days will feel like regression. That's normal. What matters is returning to the questions. Is this choice true for me? Does this align with who I'm becoming? The ultimate measure of authenticity isn't how boldly you declare yourself to the world. It's how honestly you meet yourself in quiet moments. Did you acknowledge your needs today? Did you treat your desires as valid? These questions aren't about ego, they're about integrity. Every time you answer yes, you reinforce the most important relationship you'll ever have, the one with yourself. Over time, these accumulated choices lead somewhere surprising. One day you'll realize the person you've been trying to become was here all along, beneath layers of adaptations. The grand gesture wasn't necessary. It was the daily practice of showing up, imperfectly, consistently, that revealed what was already there. The ultimate reward: freedom and impact. Here's the paradox no one talks about. The more you choose yourself, the more valuable you become to others. It sounds counterintuitive. We're taught that serving others means putting ourselves last. But research shows the opposite is true. When you stop contorting yourself to fit expectations, something shifts. Your relationships deepen. Your work becomes more impactful. Your presence gains a quality that can't be faked. What Jung called individuation, the process of becoming whole. The fear that self-focus leads to isolation is common. Many hesitate to set boundaries or speak their truth, worried they'll push people away. But studies on workplace dynamics reveal something surprising. Teams with authentic leaders show higher engagement and innovation. Why? Because when you model self-respect, you unconsciously give others permission to do the same. It's not about declaring your needs loudly. It's about embodying them quietly. Like a lighthouse, your steady presence guides others without saying a word. Think about the last time you met someone truly comfortable in their skin. Not perfect or polished, but deeply aligned. Their energy was different, less guarded, more open. Harvard Business Review research confirms this observation. Authenticity fosters trust, and trust accelerates collaboration. People might not remember your qualifications or accomplishments, but they remember how you made them feel. When you're anchored in your truth, that energy ripples outward. Relationships based on conditions may fall away, but what remains are connections built on mutual recognition. Jungian psychology explains this through shadow integration. As Jack E. Othon notes, when you work to heal and integrate your shadow, you build trust in your relationships. The parts of yourself you've hidden don't vanish. They control you from the shadows. But when you reclaim them, they transform into strengths. That coworker you thought was too assertive? Once you acknowledge your own suppressed confidence, their behavior stops triggering you. The friend who seemed needy? When you honor your own desires for care, their requests feel less burdensome. Integration doesn't just change you, it changes how you perceive everyone around you. History's most influential figures understood this. Martin Luther King Jr. didn't soften his message to appease critics. Frida Kahlo painted her pain without sanitizing it. Their power came from ruthless authenticity, not despite it. Studies on social movements show this pattern. Leaders who embody their truth inspire action more effectively than those who shapeshift. When you stop performing, you free others from that same pressure. Your wholeness becomes a mirror that reflects their potential back to them. This plays out practically in daily interactions. Say you start declining Sunday dinners with family because you need solitude. At first, they might protest, but over time, something shifts. Your honesty about your limits gives them space to examine theirs. One relative admits they've been overcommitting. Another confesses they've wanted to skip gatherings for years. Your selfish choice inadvertently creates room for collective honesty. As Marie-Louise von Franz observed, dreams are the letters of the self that the self writes us every night. Your authentic actions are like those dreams, messages from your deeper truth that others can't help but notice. Work environments reveal this too. Managers who admit mistakes see their teams take more risks. Colleagues who voice unconventional ideas spark creativity in others. Research on innovation shows that psychological safety, the freedom to be genuine without fear, is the bedrock of breakthroughs. When you stop censoring yourself, you give others tacit permission to do the same. Your transparency about challenges makes their struggles feel less isolating. Your boundaries around overwork validate their need for balance. The Jungian self operates beyond individual benefit. Murray Stein describes individuation as becoming one's own self. This isn't narcissism. It's recognizing that your uniqueness serves the collective. Consider how trees in a forest communicate through underground fungal networks. They share nutrients, warn of threats, and support struggling saplings. Your authenticity functions similarly. When you stop pretending, you emit signals that others unconsciously absorb. A younger colleague sees you leave on time and questions their own late nights. A friend witnesses you speak calmly in conflict and rethinks their own reactions. The final insight is subtle, but vital. Choosing yourself isn't the end goal. It's the foundation. The real impact lies in what you build from that solid ground. Integrated individuals don't just feel better internally. They create ecosystems where others thrive. Projects align with natural strengths. Relationships flow without performance. Creativity emerges effortlessly because energy isn't wasted on pretense. This isn't theoretical. You've likely experienced it firsthand. Those rare moments when you showed up fully and noticed others relaxing into themselves too. The teacher whose passion made you care about a dull subject. The leader whose vulnerability made challenges feel surmountable. Their authenticity didn't isolate them. It magnetized people. Your wholeness is a gift the world needs. Not a perfected version, but an authentic one. Flaws, quirks, and all. As Jung put it, this is about becoming who you truly are. That journey doesn't end. It deepens. And with each step, you leave traces for others to follow. Not by lighting their path, but by trusting yours enough to walk it unapologetically. The ripple effects are already happening. Every time you choose honesty over harmony, rest over productivity, or quiet conviction over loud approval, you're shifting something larger than yourself. You're proving that another way is possible. And that proof, more than any words, is what gives others courage to embark on their own journey. Choosing yourself isn't selfish. It's how you become someone who can truly contribute. When you stop betraying your own needs, you stop resenting others for theirs. The loneliness you fear is temporary, but what replaces it? Wholeness lasts. Your journey will be unlike anyone else's. As Carl Jung said, the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. That means rejecting comparisons. The real you isn't an improved version. It's the uncovered one. What truth have you buried that's waiting to breathe? Like a sculptor revealing the form within the stone, start chiseling today. The masterpiece emerges one honest choice at a time. Dear wonderful Esoteric Quintessence community, as we wrap up today's message, I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for joining me on this journey of self-discovery and growth. Your presence here means the world, and I'm so grateful for every moment we share. Keep shining, keep uncovering your true selves, and I'll see you in the next video. Until then, take care and stay true to you. Warmest hugs from the Esoteric Quintessence team.